Let's do something a little different here, have a little bit of fun, and dive into that place on YouTube where all the Futt Buckery goes on, and you're either dead nuts wrong or they love you. We call it the comment section here on the Tradesman Channel videos. Generally, my comments are really good coming from you guys, and I love it. So it's always made this channel kind of work well, is a lot of the accessibility that you guys have to me. I try to answer, I answer 90% of the comments. Sometimes you get behind on them, then other times you're just phenomenal right on them. But you guys have always been able to get a hold of me, especially when something's really important. So we're going to answer read off some of the comments, answer some of the questions. We're going to try to do this, I think, once a week. Kind of a little new segment, change things up a little bit, because you guys are always watching me run this, run that, build this, build that. And we get into where we don't just have a conversation very often. So let's open up the old phone. It's all right here. We'll go to the old comments section. All right, what do we have? Eduardo Martin Saliveri, super spy, I call him, because with a name like that, you must be a super spy. He is a viewer, a longtime viewer coming from South America. And he says the usual suspects, LOL. Have a nice day, Jim. You have a nice day too, Super Spy. Let's continue on. Now, we're not going to go through every comment on the channel, but let's see what we have. Brian Smith, a couple hours ago, as of this recording. Brian is a lurker. He comments once in a while, and usually when Brian comments, he has some really good input, so we're going to give his comment some attention here. The bearing is best used as a reference for setting the fence. They are great for pattern work, but if you want a straight line, a small knot or imperfection can be a big problem, so it's best to use a fence. Brian is absolutely correct. This was in mention of the last video titled, where are you? Beautiful shiplap wallboards from reclaimed pine. Yes, because we're doing like 3 or 4 videos on reclaimed pine. So Brian is absolutely right. Those bearings are just a guide, and if you do have a knot hole, your bit will follow it. That's happened a couple times. It's not as big a deal for me here with what I'm doing, but if I was doing a set of cabinets, I certainly would not be relying on that for the exact reasons Brian said. He is absolutely right, and that is good advice. Here is one of our longtime regulars. He is a big Norm Abrams fan. We call him Elrod. Elrod, he always, and I tell you what, this guy's been around the woodworking world for a lot of years, and he really knows his stuff. Router stuff. How often do you use templates with screw into the base? Rarely to not at all. So to the first question, I do not often use templates in the base. Usually I'll make a lot of jigs to hold the routers, as you guys saw, like the router sled when we were building the timber frame for cutting a lot of the housings. Or I'll have it set up in my router table. And if I'm doing something like this, where it's really long boards, I'm relying on the bearings. I did have a piece of that cutting board on the bottom of the router for the straight bit, which worked quite well. But yeah, so I do not use templates very often. He recommends to drill out the center hole to clear the rabbiting bit, and Bob's your auntie. Could be. In the meantime, order yourself another bottom plate, parentheses 2-pack at Amazon for $18. He has at least 3 PC690 series routers, which is the Porter cable, but he must have 5 or more bases. I have a couple bases kicking around. I probably could drill one out. So next one, Bill D. He says you went 12 minutes without swearing. I prefer the potty mouth. The swearing and the rough language in the videos. Sometimes I use it, sometimes I don't. A lot of times it depends on my mood. Some of you guys can't stand it. Some don't mind it. Some find it entertaining. I tell you what, you guys get the PG version of me. Ask anybody who knows me personally. I have a terrible mouth on me. I swear constantly. The F word is a comma to me. Does it sound educated? No. Am I ignorant? No. It's just my favorite. It's my favorite noun, pronoun, adjective. Punctuation. We like it for punctuation. Verb, adverb, whatever you got. It's my favorite metaphor. I just like the F word. I just don't use it here a lot. So, more information you guys probably want to know. Okay, let's read some more. All right, Bob Driggers. I like the Foursquare idea down below. This is in response to somebody else's comment. Well, now I asked the question in the last video, what do you guys think on the setup for the forge area? I have some ideas in my head, but I'm always open to more suggestions. I may tell you to frig off, or I may say, hey, that's a great idea. But you guys are a pretty sharp group, so a lot of you guys have been doing shop work longer than I've been alive, so I do tend to listen once, twice a year. So, maybe for peace of mind, build a sheet metal cabinet with doors to contain any mishaps with the hydraulics. You can't stop all of it. Where are we here? You can't stop all of it under that kind of pressure, but maybe redirect it to a safer location. Probably some metal guards would not be a bad idea. I'm not as worried about the hoses and things like that blowing leaks. I've worked around agricultural equipment my whole life. I've been around a lot of hydraulic stuff my whole life. I have very seldom seen, actually I don't think I've ever seen a hydraulic hose blow out that wasn't just plain ratty and should have been replaced 20 years before the damn thing blew out. If you have one where the hoses are starting to crack, you're starting to see the steel braids come through, it is only a matter of time before that sucker's going to blow on you. Fittings, you just got to watch them. I mean, if they're right there in front of you where you can see them, watch them close. Make sure you don't have any drips develop. If you see any drips develop, replace the fitting or retighten it until it stops dripping, because that little drip could turn into a pinhole leak. And if hydraulic fluid or diesel fluid or anything like that embeds into your skin, you're in for a rough time of it. It is nasty stuff. All right. Mickey Stahl. Nice work, Jim. Can't you set up a lean-to for the sawmill on one of the long sides of the barn? Just pour a small concrete slab for the mill and cover with a tin roof. Mickey, that is definitely the plan. We've mentioned that before last couple of years on the channel, to where eventually I want to do a lean-to full length on this side of the barn, full length on that side of the barn, and that would pretty well empty this building out, and that would give me my sawmill building. It's always time and money here. Right now we're trying to get the tool business up and running, so the sawmilling and all that is a secondary thing at the moment. As we get this set up, we get a tool inventory going, I can kind of get back to the other stuff, because that will allow me some income to do the other stuff, to buy logs for timber framing, things of that nature. Let's keep going here. Dan Gilson. I do a lot of woodworking and suggest using a piece of tempered masonite for a temporary router plate. It is cheap and easy and a lot safer. When one of you guys say it's cheap and easy, you guys are opening it up in the comments. For a guy like me, that is so hard to leave alone. I mean, cheap and easy, that's all kinds of jokes just come to mind with that kind of thing. It is cheap and easy and a lot safer. When done, you can throw it. I like the 1/4-inch stuff, but Home Despot has, I said Home Despot, he said HD, but I know what he meant. Has the 3/16 inch for $12 and some change for a 4x8 piece. The tempered stuff is the dark chocolate brown, not the light brown. It is the same stuff as pegboard without the holes. I also use it for inserts for my drill press. When it gets too many holes, I remove and slap another piece on and trim up with a router. Dan, not a bad idea at all. Definitely not a bad idea. Okay, Michael Morissette writes, have you thought about replacing the press hoses with either Sked 80 pipe or a swedge block tubing and fittings? That would seriously reduce the risk of a leak, which reduces the fire risk. I would also keep a 20-pound or 30-pound dry chem extinguisher within 10 feet of the press just in case. Okay, so let's get distracted here. Another comment below it. So I do keep a fire extinguisher out here in ABC. It's kind of a Swiss Army knife fire extinguisher. The black iron pipe, the Schedule 80 pipe, is rough on the inside and it creates more heat within your hydraulic system. I use some short pieces of black iron nipple just to make a couple of connections. I'm not too worried about it. I really like the swedge block. The swedge lock tubing is probably a better idea. That's more of a, if I'm thinking of the same stuff you are, that's more of the steel lines you see on your tractors going from one, usually they're the ones that don't move. And that would probably work much better than that mess I have on there. It looks like a damn octopus. Todd Archer writes, never set the bit in all the way down, leave an 1/8 inch exposed. The shaft can have a small taper at the end. So Todd's comment, I'm assuming, is in regards to the last video where I was talking about years ago how a router bit had come out of a cheap Craftsman router and cranked me in the hand, tore me up decently. So I know what Todd is talking about. Some of the bits do have a little taper there. That bit I put on in the last video was not in quite all the way. I always push them down all the way and pull them back out a little bit. But that Craftsman bit years ago, it was one of those cheap Craftsman routers. It was the first one I owned. And when I was building the house, I was building my cabinets, my first set of cabinets ever. And I had a rabbiting bit on there, and it was a 1/4 inch collet on that router, and it had one of those, instead of like the Porter cables or the nicer ones where you use 2 wrenches to tighten the collet down, this was this cheap little piece of dog shit, little metal push button like what you see on a Dremel. And you push that in, then you take this cheap ass little piece of shit wrench and tighten the collet down. It was only a 1/4 inch collet. Well, that thing would not tighten down enough to grip a bit just right. And you have to watch it because some of the shanks on those router bits have a little line in them. This, or a little groove around them. This didn't have it. It was pretty much boils down to as a piece of shit router, and you just plain couldn't get the bits in there quite tight enough. That thing went in the garbage as soon as the bit flew out, and I got my first Porter cable, and it has been used for a lot of years. Okay. Okay, Alex Wilson, he is one of our viewers from down under. He's a very loyal viewer. He always takes the time to comment. We like Alex a lot, and he's always polite. Shop's coming along nicely. As for ideas for setup, I've taken to watching Jason Knight. His shop seems to flow well, so something similar might be the way to go. So Jason Knight, if any of you guys watch Out of the Woods Forestry, my buddy Nathan, he actually has had the opportunity to work with Jason in his shop. For those of you who do not know who Jason Knight is, he was on Forged in Fire as one of the judges for a little bit. He's a certified master bladesmith. He is a true talent in the knife making world if you're in the knife making. I definitely will watch a little bit more of his and see how he is set up. Thank you, Alex. Okay. He's one of my favorite viewers from out in Wyoming, a retired shop teacher. This guy's a great guy. My buddy Don, our SNS by 2 channel. It makes good sense to put the forge in the center of the work area and the forge press towards the center of the barn and the anvil towards the outside. You can then hang the hammers on the wall, and the exhaust for the forge does not go over the hydraulic line of the forge press. That's a good idea, Don. Thank you. Phil Morrison writes, that spalted pine looks great. I keep that press as far away from the forge as I could. A few extra steps is cheap insurance if your press decides to blow a hydraulic line. Phil, you do have a good point there. Graham Allen, one of our viewers from the UK, another wonderful guy. Hi Jim, enjoyed this video very much. That rabbit router bit is great. I have one myself and think it's great. Nice smooth cut. I agree. I do like your idea of having the forge in a central position with everything right at hand so you're not losing that heat. Take care. See you on the next one. All the best, Graham. Graham's a nice guy. Okay. Let's see. Archie Ball. I like Archie. Archie has good comments. This is the first time I've actually been in the comments much today. Okay, Archie, fine job. Does your wife know that you wrote the book on trying to be slick? Very nice, Archie. Peter Lee, some fire suppression, some super fire suppression, CO2 or halo. Probably not a bad idea to protect the investment of time and energy that went into building this building. I know we're going quite a while. What are we at? Holy shit, we're at the 15-minute mark on this, just this part? Ooh. Oh, Mike Hagdahl, I responded to you, you jackass, in writing. But I guess since you're such a loyal viewer, and Mike is the one who is responsible for that beautiful Milwaukee metal cutting saw we have. Mike was sick of seeing me run a grinder all the time cutting my metal, and this box shows up on my doorstep of one of these things. I so much appreciate it. But, Mike, you're still a nutsack, but we love you anyway. In a non-homosexual kind of a way. I may have to edit that part out. That's Thomas Russell's job. Grin, all about putting up with screws. In the very next video, using a Brad nailer, LOL. You make it so easy to give you crap, LOL. LOL, Mike? How old are you, Mike? How friggin' old are you, buddy? So, Mike is right. So the video before we started throwing these boards up, I was talking about a lot of viewers give me shit for using screws all the time instead of nails because nails are cheap, or an air nailer or something like that. And I'd said in that video, I like putting things together with screws because I change my mind a lot. And if I want to take something apart, I want to be able to take it apart without pulling nails. Well, I got into planing these boards down, and I was going to use screws to put them all back together. It's framed out with screws, but these boards look so nice when they got planed down. I just could not bring myself to have those big screw heads poking in those boards. And I figure, you know, maybe this will keep it so it's so much of a pain in the ass I won't want to take it apart after putting it back together. So there's my excuse. Douglas Mungham, hey buddy. So Joe Schubert, now this is interesting. I've never heard of this before. I'm going to have to look into it. And it sounds very interesting. So Joe writes, looking good, Jim. I know they make a flame-resistant hydraulic fluid you could run in your press. If you're interested, I'll contact my former employer and get details for you. He also writes, spreading out will make life much easier. The press would probably go well next to the post, giving you access to put long items in it, and access to the tank, and not have to move it around. Just a thought. That's kind of what I had envisioned in my head a little bit. Oh, another comment from Douglas. You have gremlins. So Jimmy Squires writes, another one on the forge press and the hydraulic hoses. What about adding some guards for your hydraulic hoses for when they might burst to keep the oil from spraying on your forge? Again, not a bad idea, and it might be a decent thing to do. Okay. Tom Feller. These comments are great. They just make you feel good. You guys are making me feel like a better human being than I actually am. You can ask anybody who knows me personally and real well. I'm not really that great of a human being, but boy, editing makes everything look better. So Tom Feller. What's really great about your channel is how you blend a bit of your personal life with the technical content. The intro with you talking to your son off camera was great. Sometimes you have, aw shucks, I'm just a simple hard-working guy, but you've become quite the skilled video storyteller. Keep up the good work. Thank you very much, Tom. I really appreciate that. Oh, 454 Packer. Buddy, this is a terrible pun. You expect me to read this comment out loud? This is awful. This is one of the shittiest dad jokes I've ever seen. So I guess we better read it anyway and let the rest of you guys decide. Shiplap happens when rabbits get in the shop. Very nice. I love it. Okay, here is one that I wanted to address. And this was not because this is good information. This is not a slam on me or nitpick or anything like this. So you guys are seeing me put this shiplap up, and I started at the top of the wall instead of the bottom. When you're usually doing shiplap, if you're using exterior walls, you got to start at the bottom, or you have to orient your seams differently than I did. This is an interior wall, so I'm not worried about it. And the reason I started at the top, if you guys remember when we poured, well, we didn't do a video, but I've talked about it before. Let me read the comment and then we'll get to the answer. A little tip, if it wasn't mentioned before, if you're applying shiplap for weather protection, it is usually arranged so that the board is lapped by the board above so that water and debris shed to the outside. Often the boards will be started at the bottom of the wall to make this easier. He is absolutely right. I could not have said it better myself. I did not start this on the floor because the concrete slab is not as even as it should be. So I didn't feel like dicking with it. I started at the I can't talk. I started at the top, and when we get to the bottom boards, I'm going to have to do a little bit of scribing. It's not that it's terrible. This side of the slab's actually higher than the other side. It's a long story, but it was a miserable day, and there was only 4 of us for this entire slab, and all I had was 2x4 screeds, and it just was not fun. But anyway, I think we better call it a video there. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. I will try to do more of these so you guys... I'm not as good at writing back as I used to be just because there's just a lot of them, and it just seems things get busier all the time. So I think I owe it to a lot of you guys to let you know that I've read them, especially regulars, and address some of the comments. And I'll also write back to you guys as soon as I have a chance. So anyway, thanks for watching, everybody. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll catch you on the next one.